Hello everybody, and welcome to this new video where I want to talk about new energy uses. And this video is mostly a story about what solar could look like, or could enable in our residences, in our residential homes, could enable in 2030 and beyond. And so this is a long-term story, and as always with stories, I may get some of it wrong, I may get half of it wrong, but I don't think I'm going to get most of it wrong. I think this story about convergence of solar and convergence of our technologies with solar and what solar will enable is a very true story. And it is a story, in my view, that makes way more sense than the story that we have right now in the stock market, which is just interest rates story. It's all about the interest rates. That's all people talk about. It makes you dumb. My view, and this stems from this channel's view, is that QE to infinity is inevitable. And QE to infinity means that the rates will go back to zero, right? We saw the next 3 months, the US is borrowing a casual $750 billion, and then the 3 months after, borrowing another casual more than $800 billion. And that's, that's in a matter of 2 quarters. In 4 quarters, we'll be at what? Close to $3 trillion. QE will come back. It is so obvious to me. And one of the main advantages of QE coming back, and this is the only thing I'll talk about QE, and I'll talk about the macro, and then I'm done and I'll tell you about the convergence. But one of the great things about QE coming back, a key advantage is that zero interest rate environments. A key advantage of that is that the vicissitude of an old man cannot change the rational decision-making of thousands of public companies, millions of small private businesses, and likely $1 to $2 billion households. Imagine this picture. Honey, we're going to have a great life. We're going to get married. We're going to buy a house. 2022. And then in 2023, honey, we can't afford a house. I'm sorry, interest rates are 8% because of the vicissitudes of an old man. Right? I don't care what interest rates should be at, but I care that they are stable, and they are not changed by some mumblings, some old belief of someone looking back in the rear view mirror and ignoring what's going on in the marketplace, which is the fact that inflation is in fact going to go down like we cannot believe, because we are seeing revolutions in just about every sector that matters most in the economy, and the sector that matters the most in the economy is energy and electricity, as you will see, and solar is revolutionizing energy. And this is not a story about rates, so I'm done talking about rates. Rates will come down. That's the thesis of this channel, and I believe there is no choice, and it's just math. It is just math. But residential solar itself is a technology story and one of convergence. And so let me tell you about the uses of solar, the uses of near zero energy. Let me tell you about these uses beyond what most people think about right now, which is the short term, which is, hey, I'm going to eliminate my electric bill this year and for the next 25 years. Well, solar is a story that's much bigger than that. It's a story of induced demand. It's a story of not only eliminating your electric bill, but finding new uses for that energy that evolve, improve our way of life, and that can disrupt. You'll see for some of the disruptions that I'm about to talk about now. So let's go. Let's talk about the obvious one, and this one is intimated not just by me. This one has made it to the mainstream YouTube. Is the idea that, you're going to be able to charge your cars at home. If you charge your cars at home, you have free transportation, right? Once the capex has been made, once your capital expenses have been made with minimal OPEX, right, minimal maintenance, and these electric cars have minimal maintenance, but solar panels have even fewer maintenance. With minimal maintenance, aside from that minimal maintenance, you get free transportation. It's the end of gas stations as we know them, as most EV owners will charge their cars at home almost year-round. Public chargers are for occasional uses only. They're mostly for road trips, and for road trips that are far away. watched a video the other day talking about a firm developing new batteries, swapping batteries on a Model S, and ending up with a Model S with almost 900 miles. Today, the Model S, if you swap the batteries with a next generation battery, you get about 900 miles of a Model S. That already covers all of your road trips in a state like Texas, probably, without having to charge once you go to your destination, spend a hotel night, and come back home. And so the mileage will keep going up on those cars. I have little doubt that we'll see cars with over 1,000 miles, and perhaps past 2030, well over 1,000 miles of range, which means that public chargers are for occasional road trips, right? They're for occasional. Most people are going to be charging at home with electricity from their roofs. That's my vision of the future. That's how I see things headed, right? Your EVs store energy for you at night in case you need excess energy at night. They store energy for you, right? Energy during the day, excess energy you can direct to your EV. If your EV is full, you can direct to your Powerwall or vice versa. You can easily transfer energy between your car, your Powerwall, or your house. Batteries become a very important factor in the decision of purchasing a car. And this makes the economics of car ownership entirely upside down, because as these batteries get better, as we get 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 cycles in this battery, you may end up in a situation where you have a lot of EVs that are 10, 15 years old, who still have batteries in them that are just fine, that end up being very, very valuable. And so even the type of car you buy, you might consider the size of the battery of a car you buy for other considerations than just driving the car around, because that's very helpful to your home to have, say, 100 kilowatt hour battery in the car, right? So this changes all of the economics, and there is a strong convergence between transportation and energy and solar. And I think this is going to be part of a solar landscape in 2030. It will be ever more compelling to get an electric car with a solar roof. The two go hand in hand. Let's talk about another convergence between electricity and its robots. And robots still get laughed at, right? People who it's easy for people to laugh at Tesla for their Optimus efforts. That's why I'm not going to talk about this today, even though I think Optimus is a very serious effort. But I want to talk about like household robots, like big robots. They are not a fad. Robots are not a fad. Do you remember the Roombas? Do you remember iRobots when they first came out in the mid-2000s? People were making fun of them. This is never going to work. Well, guess what? There's tons of those out there. I have many friends that have these robots. I myself am considering getting one of these robots. These Roomba robots are not a fad, so the stock price will do what it do. Although iRobot stock price is not that bad. I mean, it didn't do that bad. It's just a random stock in the field. But let me tell you the example of Roomba as an example. So revenue, depending on where you look, in 9 years it had about tripled, and right now the sales are down. They have a lot of competition from China, so now they are still double in their sales in a 10-year period. Nothing to sneeze at. It's really, really good. But I want to talk about the volume adoption. Keep in mind that when this product was introduced, right, it was $900, right? And now you can get that same product, same brand, same everything, $159 at Walmart. And you have dozens of very popular Chinese copies. So these home vacuuming robots are becoming slowly mainstream. They're becoming mainstream as much as they were laughed at 10, 15 years ago when they were launched. And today, there's other household robots that are laughed at. Like you may have seen lawn mowing robots. There's actually a lot of FUD about lawn mowing robots, which, in my view, these are a wonderful idea. You can have a perfect lawn all the time. And so you have a lot of FUD, to reuse the 2021 term. You have a lot of FUD saying, "Oh, people steal those." It's the same FUD. Like the argument of theft is the same argument that people were using against Amazon back in 2015, 2014, when it was very clear that Amazon was winning. You had commercial retail was like, "Well, there's a lot of theft with Amazon." Well, yeah, there's a lot of theft. There's always been a lot of theft, and this is something for your local police to handle, for your local state to handle. This does not fall under the purview of technology. And actually, this technology can, these machines, they can render themselves useless after they've been stolen, right? Which clearly de-emphasizes theft. So aside from all of the FUD and all of this FUD going on with these machines, the truth is that these lawn mowing robots, if you follow YouTube and if you follow those, and I've been following those for a while, those videos are more and more popular. The reviews are more and more positive. The costs are going down. They're about $800 to $1,000. If you go to a Home Depot, whatever, look at the aisle of mowers. You'll see they've almost all gone electric. Like electric as one, that space. They've almost all gone electric, And in fact, the electric is pretty darn powerful when you mow. So they're being laughed at right now. What are these going to cost? What are these going to cost 5 years, 10 years from now? Are you going to have 2 or 3? One for the backyard, one for the front yard, one for your shrubs, right? And they all need power. Right, that's the point of these robots. As the home becomes filled with more robots, these robots need power. And so what happens when you have a lot of sun, on your roof? It's the middle of the day, you have a lot of sun, you have excess energy. Just power on the lawn mowing robot and have the robot mow your lawn when you have a lot of energy. And there will be many, many more robots out there that are going to be powered by this excess energy that we are going to get from our roofs. We are going to get it from our roofs because when I look at, say, 100 amp service, and when you see all of the uses for electricity that I'm about to tell you in this video, 100 amp service, I guarantee you the grid can't handle this much demand for electricity from households. The grid is not going to be able to handle it. Houses are going to have to produce their own electricity. This is something that is going to become decentralized. I mean, think about just transportation. So you're adding a network of transportation of people charging at home right there. If you don't change the grid, you're going to have problems with, say, your typical US service, which is a 100 amp service. 100 amp at 240 volts, you're gonna have problems. It's not gonna be enough, right? You're not gonna be able to do fast charge and a bunch of things you're not gonna be able to do. So if everybody does it. So we have the transportation, that's the problem. Now we have the robots. The robots, which are gonna be a thing, which are already a thing, as I demonstrated with the home vacuuming robots. What if every house out there has the equivalent of one human worker in the form of half a dozen robots who does tasks for us, right? That's power. That's turning labor into raw power, which to me is very fascinating. So let me move on to convergence number 3. And I realize that this video is 2030 out, so it requires some thinking. It requires thinking outside the box, right? You can't be too conservative and believe things will remain the way they've always been done. You can't believe we'll keep doing things because of the way it's always been done, right? Right? We don't have horses anymore, but it's the way it had always been done. So let me move on to a third convergence. In my view, if you have free electricity, what does that mean? What does that mean if you have free excess electricity on your roof? Your solar panels are paid for, then you have free electricity minus some OPEX, barely any OPEX. What does that mean? That means you have free water. So one utility sector, in my view, will be disrupted by free electricity. If we all get free electricity on our roofs, then it becomes very compelling to start just creating our own water at home with atmospheric water generators. And these are very hot right now. And a lot of these innovations sometimes you see in the world of, say, camping and in the world of outdoor space. This is kind of where they're taking off right now. But it's funny, a lot of the emergency grids, emergency batteries also took off in that space, and now they are going mainstream. And let me tell you one thing about water bills. I've lived in areas where water bills were equal to my electricity bills. Now I live very near the Gulf Coast, so water bill is cheaper in my area. But I've lived in areas more inland, and depending on the water district, where your water district can be just as expensive as your electric bill. Now, these in size are no different from a condenser for your AC outside in your house. They're no different. The atmospheric water generator, which means they use the humidity out of the air. They extract the humidity out of the air and turn that humidity into drinking water. And why do I believe people are going to be very compelled to use those in the future is because water quality is actually a major issue nowadays. And, with the internet, with information circulating freely, you have a lot of more people who are more hyper aware of the fact that the water that we get from our water grids has a lot of issues. It's not good water. It's not good water. There's a lot of issues with hormones. There's a lot of very serious studies that look at estrogen and the issues to fertility, especially in men. If you drink a lot of water from your sink, if you drink a lot of that water, that may lead to a lot of different issues, and of course this is dependent on your grid, and of course there's a lot of misinformation out there about this, but nonetheless there is a general consensus forming about the quality of our water, right? If you walk into the Home Depot, you've probably seen, as soon as you walk into the Home Depot, these water testing kits. How many houses do you see with water purifying systems? This is a real thing. There's an issue with water quality. It's also due to grid unreliability. Let me tell you one thing about grid unreliability. Did you know this? Whenever the grid goes out, what happens to the pump in the water system? So you may know this is how water systems work. Water systems, sometimes they're very old and they have an efficiency, right? And the efficiency rating of a water system is how much water you lose because of leaks, because there's leaks in the system, right? Some of these pipes in the ground have not been changed perhaps for 1 century in certain cities. They have not been changed. And so you have water grids where the reliability of a water grid is in the 80%, which means that at all times, under pressure, you have 20% that comes out of your pipes because of various leaks all over in the ground, right? And a bunch of the work of a water district is to get that water coming out of pipes fixed. Now, what happens when the power goes out? When the power goes out, the pumps of your water system stop working. Now, of course, you're going to tell me, oh, that's not true. They have a backup generator. Well, yeah, they have a backup generator if you have a 5-minute outage. But what if you have what if you have a 1 day or 2 day outage? And this is a very common problem in Texas. How many times in Texas, if you live in Texas, you may know how many times you see things like a water boil. Like there's a water boil advisory. That's because the pressure in the pipes is gone. And since there's no pressures in the pipe, you have the dirt, you have the lead, whatever is going on with those pipes. You have everything going into the pipes. And so there's a lot of water issues. Anyways, that was a bit of a tangent. There's a lot of issues with water treatment. And so, of course, if you make it at home, it's going to be mostly dependent on you and mostly dependent on maintaining your own system, and then you become responsible of maintaining your own system. And I think a lot of people are not only going to find this to be much cheaper to create their own water at home, and they're also going to find it to be much healthier. And I think this is one of the next revolution, and I can't find any public company that's like a pure play in this space. This is still in the startup phase, but in my view, this will be big. And I haven't really seen many people say that out there. So I'm probably the only one who thinks about that. Well, maybe not. But, I haven't seen that many people talk about that out there. But I think this will be big. And keep in mind, some of these bigger systems, you can generate 200 gallons a day. 200 gallons a day. Now, if you implement in your house what they call a dual water system with gray water, where you have gray water that you can use, say, for the toilet, etc. If you have gray water, then you can have a water recycling system. There's ways, people often throw out these statistics about how much water we use. There's very efficient ways to manage your water differently. And I think because we're going to have excess power, and a lot of that excess power is going to need to be directed somewhere. So that excess power is going to be directed towards your cars, maybe towards your robots, and maybe towards generating your own water when your cars are full and your robots have done their job. And so I think I think this will be a major convergence, but there's more. Let me move on with the convergences here. There's more. And of course, this will depend on your area. You may live in an area where you never have to do this, but you may live in another area where you have to do this, right? Okay, here's another convergence. Computing. If you have excess energy at your house, you can channel that excess energy into computing. GPUs actually use a lot of power, and computers, consumer electronics, such as computers, actually use a lot of power. You'd be surprised if you have a household and say you have 3 kids and maybe you play video games as well, and maybe there's a video game play, you'd be surprised by how much power these electronic devices consume. And we're going to use more and more electronic devices, which means that we're going to need to power these either from the grid, from electricity we buy from the grid, or we are also going to be using it for extra compute. And this compute, it's already happening. You can already resell this compute. Reselling this compute is obviously called Bitcoin mining. And I know on this channel, based on the number of views, I know most people dismiss Bitcoin, and it's okay. But the concept is the same. If you have excess energy, you can channel that excess energy in applications for computing. And of course, then, through optic fiber, through the internet, through Starlink, whatever, you do your little computations and you send back the computations to a centralized system, which then pays you, which is the concept of Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is what? You go into a mining pool, you do your computations for that mining pool, and then you get a share of the gains that mining pool made thanks to your computations, and your computations were done through your electricity feeding in the mining machines. Well, this is going to be more true and more true and more true. And if you follow cryptocurrencies a little bit, but especially proof of work cryptocurrencies, you may know that this is not just Bitcoin. You may know that there's a lot of projects that require decentralized computing out there. And I think this is going to be a real use of our excess energy. And there's other things you can do, like you can donate your computing power to find prime numbers. You can donate your computing power to charity. There's a lot of different projects that you can do with computing power. It's very powerful. And I think this is going to get even more important as more mainstream looking, because who wants to have this in their living room, right? That's not, to most people that's not very pretty. I find it cool, but to most people that's not very pretty. So nobody wants to have some of this, but they're making them look better. This is a company that I was looking at that specializes in making these good looking Bitcoin miners for your house. They're making them quieter. They're making them more accessible to the average person. And Square famously, Jack Dorsey from Block is famously working on a perfectly fine appliance to mine Bitcoin at home, very, very, very easily. And of course, I know what you're going to tell me. It's not profitable to mine Bitcoin at home. Well, it's true. If you pay 15 cents a kilowatt hour, it's true. It's not profitable. It actually becomes profitable at about 2 to 3 cents. 2 to 3 cents a kilowatt hour. It's when it's profitable right now. Right? But with these systems, there's 2 things. So one of them is if you channel excess energy because it's 2 o'clock and you have great sun outside and you're done with all of your uses for electricity, and you channel that excess energy into your Bitcoin miner, well, your cost of electricity is virtually zero. Right, it's virtually zero. So if you're paying zero for electricity, you're still getting back your money in the form of Bitcoin. So that's point number 1. And then there is a very compelling dual use for all computing, not just for Bitcoin mining, and that is of course space eaters. And that may seem a little silly to think of it like that, but of course, computing generates a lot of heat. Now, when you have centralized computing, all of that heat is a problem. It's a major problem, right? Because it gets too hot and the device is shut down. But if you don't have centralized computing, if it's just your house who has a machine, that machine can be used to generate heat. So you don't lose a lot of that computing because you've generated some heat. And that heat can be used for many ways. And actually, if you go on YouTube, you can see many examples of people living in the north of the US where it's really cold, and they just heat their homes with Bitcoin miners running in the basement. And that is a true thing as well. And these things get really hot and create a lot of heat. So that's a convergence too. And I don't know where this world is headed, but I see a bright future in these applications. And let me conclude this video with the last, and this is perhaps the most and beyond type of prediction, because we're not there yet. But I think this is something that solar will enable. Just like a lot of people have become wary of drinking water from their water grids and the centralized nature of the water grids. And when someone screws up in your water grid, the whole town has a boil advisory where they can't drink the water anymore. Well, this is pretty similar to a lot of what we've seen, and we've seen in food, right? We've seen that in food a lot, and this is, I think, where the future is headed. Food growing appliances. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these food growing appliances right now focus on leafy greens, and one of the reasons for that is because you may know that there's been a lot of recalls in leafy greens. If you've been living in the U.S., you know, every 3 or 4 years you have things like E. coli come up, and then you go to, I don't know, fast food or whatever, and they say, we're out of lettuce. Sorry, we're out of lettuce. We don't have any lettuce because there's a shortage. You may remember this, right? It's happened multiple times over the past 10 years. Things like leafy greens are very sensitive to growing outside, so that's why I think a lot of people are doing these appliances, developing these appliances for this. But the truth is, you can grow a lot of food at home in these fully automated appliances that use AI to define, how much to grow, how much to water your food, etc. It's a computer farmer. It's a computer farmer with a door, and you open it and you put your food in it and it grows. And I think this will be a major use of electricity in the future. This is another example of people growing mushrooms. But of course, to get bigger, it needs to be more than just lettuce, right? It needs to be more than that. And this is what Tony Seba has been saying as well in a river. I mean, it's a few years old video, but this is really true. Is precision fermentation. Because of the world of brewing, right? Mostly brewing beers, we've made a lot of advances actually in fermentation, and it turns out. Let me read this, right? Precision fermentation requires substantial inputs of energy, but little else. And so it turns out with precision fermentation and the progress we're making, you may be able to grow your own milk, to grow other types of fragrances, food, proteins. And I realize this is a little out there, but right now the state in the lab is you can do it in the lab. You can do it in the lab. You can reproduce a lot of the mechanisms that say would happen, I don't know, inside a cow, for example, inside a cow's belly. You can reproduce these fermentation. You can reproduce it with energy, and this is pretty stunning to me. So of course this is 2030 and beyond, but today we cook a lot at home. There's a lot of stuff that we cook at home. There's a lot of appliances that help us cook at home. You may remember things like coffee machines, for example, are a big deal. But even home brewing is a big deal. We create quite a bit of our own food at home, and that's because energy is the main input of creating that food. And I think this will continue. And who knows? Who knows? 2030 and beyond. How much of a food that we're going to have is just going to be food that you're creating at home? Are you going to have things like, I don't know, your fridge? You could have a box in your fridge, and that's a yogurt making machine. And it just makes a little bit of yogurt every day. And the yogurt falls in a container. And every day you have a little fresh yogurt made. Just like some people save a soda stream machines and they make their own sodas every morning, or you make your own espresso with an espresso machine every morning. These, I believe, are going to be some of the revolutions that are going to be possible because we have all of this excess energy. And if you follow precision fermentation, you may know that the main cost of fermentation is heat. That's the main cost. Like if you look at beer, which is the most famous example of that, the main cost of making beer is actually the heating it up, right? So heat. You have heat, you have energy, you have water, light, heat. That's what electricity gives you. Electricity gives you water, light, and heat. And if you have water, light, and heat, you can turn a lot of stuff into food and bring that value creation in-house. And I think this is part of our future. And these are some of the uses of future energy for us. And that's why the solar story is much more than eliminating your electric bill as it is today, because uses for electricity are just going to increase. And so I realized a little bit of a different video today. I hope that you still liked it. This is part of my my movement for the channel, where I'm trying to stop talking about the day-to-day and try to talk about the very long term. But I can tell you one thing: these videos take a lot longer to make than talking about the numbers and the day-to-day, which is why I think a lot of people talk about the day-to-day, because it's easy. Copy and paste a number and comment on it. Anyways, hopefully you found this video interesting. Obviously not investment advice at all. Obviously this is just entertainment. I appreciate you liking my video, sharing my videos, subscribing, everything. You know what to do. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.